The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the final webinar this spring-summer of our SED webinar series. Today we're going to be hearing about navigating state aid output reports. Before I turn it over to Deborah Cunningham to introduce you to our speaker, a few points of order for you. If anyone has a question at any time during the presentation, please feel free to ask it. There's several ways to go ahead and do that. The first way is to use the chat screen, which is located on your GoToWebinar control panel. That control panel is typically located on the right-hand side of your screen. If you do not see that, there should be a small column on the right-hand side of your screen that has some buttons on it. One is an orange button. You can click that button to maximize your control panel. And also on that panel is a button that has a hand on it. The second way you can ask a question is by hitting that. And if you had typed in your audio pin into your phone when you connected, I'll be able to connect you, and you can ask your question over the phone with our speaker. And the third way is you can use the question and answer, also entitled Questions, on your GoToWebinar control panel. That's sort of a threaded messaging type app. Type your questions in via chat or the question and answer screen, and either Deborah or I will make sure we get that answered for you. Or if you typed in your audio pin into your phone when you signed on, I'll be able to put you through to Bruce, and you can talk to him over the phone. So that out of the way, I'm going to turn over to Deborah Cunningham, and she will introduce you to our speaker.
Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Deborah Cunningham, and welcome to this New York State Association of School Business Officials webinar on state aid output reports. I am Deborah Cunningham, Director of Education and Research for New York State ASBO. This is part of New York State ASBO's SED webinar series that we have been pursuing this year. Our presenter today is Bruce Jesiolowski. Bruce has been employed by the New York State Education Department since November of 1989. For his first 2.5 years in the department, he served as senior accountant and associate accountant within the Program Services Reimbursement Unit. During his tenure in the reimbursement unit, he determined tuition rates and coordinated other related fiscal matters for private and public school approved special education programs. In May 2002, he became associate in school business management in the state aid office. His duties have included supervising the attendance, transportation program areas, and coordinating the calculation of New York City building aid. And in June 2012, he began supervising the state aid data unit. Bruce has been a regular contributor to New York State ASBO events, and we welcome this webinar. So, Bruce, please welcome and go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Matt. Today, as it was announced, is state aid output reports, and format will be a PowerPoint presentation, and then throughout the presentation, if you do have questions, please send them through the manner that Matt just provided instructions for, and we'll see if we can work them into the presentation. We have about 45 minutes, so I'm going to proceed. Presentation overview, we're going to talk about what are output reports, where can they be found, what does it mean when they're public, the format and the layout, how do you view output reports, viewing output reports within SAMS, viewing output reports via the public website, when do output reports change, when are output reports valid, and output reports and state aid payments, and then finally printing output reports. What are output reports? Output reports, also called state aid claim reports, display the state aid payable to districts for some areas, the aidable expense for projected aid year. And what that means is most of our output reports actually display state aid payable to a district, but we do have various reports like the transportation estimated reports and the building estimated reports that show the projected year expenses that allow districts to see what we're calculating currently for your next year. We develop output reports each year, and we publish them on our website. The reports provide detailed descriptions of the data items and the calculations of the state aid formulas. As I said, EST output reports display the aidable expense for the projected aid year for selected aid areas. And those EST reports use current law, as we don't really know yet what the next year's budget will bring us and the laws will bring us, so EST reports are always current year law. Districts can use EST reports to estimate their projected aid and to also verify the data that they have on file that we're using to project aid. And that's very, very important that you look at your EST reports to see that the data you feel you have claimed and submitted to us, for instance, SA-16 bus purchases or building applications, are showing up on your EST output reports. We don't show aid on the EST reports because we do not yet have the aid ratios and the aid formula parameters until the state budget is enacted in the coming year. And then example, the TRA-EST report published during the 13-14 claim year actually shows 13-14 expenses reported by the district that will be used for 14-15 aid purposes. Where can output reports be found? Output reports can be found in two places: on our state aid website, https://stateaid.nysed.gov, and that's where you find the public official output reports that anybody with a web browser can view and see. The other place where output reports are found are within SAMS, and they're only accessible to users that actually have SAMS accounts. Getting to both reports is very different. So I'm going to go through each path to the output reports. And I just want to mention also that within SAMS you have much more functionality. And you also may have more output reports available. State aid website. If you go to the state aid website, there's two basic paths to get to the output reports. I'm going to open up my screen a little bit, and if you go, this is our state aid web page. Our state aid web page, when you log on, you can either choose the view district data, you see where my arrow's moving, or the block, the enter and go. So you can enter your school code and go. If you use the view district data, you'll get this screen, and then if you click on this link, it jumps you right to the next page, and you can enter a school code, and it should give you all the output reports. If you go and key in your school code and hit go, you get a slightly different view. You're going to get a URL, and then it's going to take you to the web page. Both both function the same, but the view district data link saves you one extra step. Once you're within the state aid output report page, all of those reports are public and official. Going to the output reports within SAMS, you need a district assigned account, and then you would go to the output reports menu bar, click on the drop down, and we'll see, we'll do that as well. So if you go to your SAMS and log in, you arrow over reports, click on output reports, and this screen will come up, and you'll have a whole list of output reports. And these, once I release them at my end, they would either be public or public and official. Output reports in SAMs, you'll see you may have access to years 06, 07 through current year. Any output report in SAMs prior to 2009-10 are out there only for testing purposes. So if we release them and they're publicly viewable, or official in SAMs for whatever reason, only 09-10 and forward are valid state aid calculations for public output report purposes. And this is a list of all the output reports for 13-14 as of June 2014. One report that's very new is the Charter School Basic Tuition Report. So if you have any charter schools, I ask that you please go out and look at that report. So now you know there's two different ways to see output reports, either on the state aid website or in SAMs. When are output reports available? They're first available within SAMs, and typically the outputs are first published within SAMs in mid to late October in the current year. Sometimes earlier, but typically we don't like to issue them earlier because there's not enough data out there to really generate and create any valid values within the output reports. The reports available for use within SAMs can be seen in the output report menu listed as either official or official and public. Reports marked as official can only be accessed from within SAMs and are not yet available to the general public. So that means that only people with login user rights can see them. The rest of the world can't see them yet on our state aid webpage. Output reports may not be valid when first published in SAMs if claim data is not yet complete. For example, transportation aid may be inaccurate on your TRA output report if your Form FT Schedule J is not yet completed. Also, I want to note, official in the output report listing means published for district use and is also used by SED internally to mean the report is no longer in test phase. Official does not refer to official versus revision data area when you see the official and the official public designation of an output report. When you see an output report in SAMs is set to official and public, the reports are now viewable within both SAMs and on the web via the state aid website. And the first time you see these on the public output report is typically November 15th. And only for those districts have all their SAMs data forms clean or clean with issue. So if you're a district that hasn't submitted your claim reports by November 15th and that output report is official and public, your reports won't be out there yet because your clean flags haven't been set. The public reports display the same data as in your SAMs official data area, except the public data is as of midnight the night before. What that means is if you go to the public website, you're going to see data as of midnight last night. If you log into SAMs and you make changes, it's real time. So your user rights give you current official as opposed to midnight last night on the public output report page. Each output report has header information and calculation lines. The header information of an output report displays the district name, district code, state aid year, today's date, and a date time field. The public web reports have a date time field labeled as data as of 12 midnight the night before. Only on reports within SAMS are there two additional fields displayed at the top of the output report. The two fields are SAMS data area and data timestamp. And these fields are directly related to the choices you make in the output report selection when you're within SAMS. And we'll discuss these a little further when discussing the data areas and the snapshots. The body of the report in SAMS has the state aid formula calculation lines. Each calculation line or entry has an entry number, description, and source column and value. It's very important that you look at the source column when you're trying to understand and interpret the output reports. The source column is important because it tells you where does the data used on a report come from. The source column will identify each item as a calculation or data from district's current or prior year SAMS claim forms or other output reports or other SED offices, other state agencies, or published executive budget or inactive budget computer runs. So what does all that mean? I have some examples here of various gen entries and output report entries that try to lay out each of those examples. I think it's best to go right to an output report. We can go to a, oh, it timed me out. Sorry about that. Viewing output reports within SAMS using SAMS data areas. Only when you're logged in as a SAMS user can the output reports be run against several data areas. So you can't do this on the public page only accesses official data, but when you're logged in as a SAMS user, you're going to be able to use the drop-down selections of the output report menu to either access official, revision data, or sandbox data. All of the output reports, if you don't make a selection, will default to the official data area and the current date time. Only the SAMS data on output reports is affected by selection of different data areas, not the data from other sources. So for instance, what that means is if the data is coming from the BEDS office, it's not going to matter if you pick official, revision, or sandbox. It's always going to grab the official data that we have from the outside sources of the IRS BEDS office or OSC full value data. Data areas. Have them listed here, the ones that SAMS users can access. You can access the official data area, and the output reports will display SAMS data after it has been accepted by state aid for state aid purposes. Revision data is data that SAMS data saved in a revision area but not yet submitted by the district, or submitted by the district but not yet accepted into official data area by SED. So you can actually bring up an output report, revise data, and then click on the output report to see where that revised data, how that revised data changes the output report results. Sandbox. Sandbox is a very nice area to go in, change data in Sandbox, and then run the output reports against the Sandbox data changes. And you can run edits and do aid calculations and do all kinds of things without impacting or affecting official or revision data areas. One thing we do ask, though, if you go into the Sandbox area, is that you periodically clear it out if you're not needing to use it anymore, because anybody can see it who has a SAMS account. So if you're out there changing around in SAMS Sandbox area, we can see it. Other people that have your password may see it, or others may want to go into Sandbox and do some modeling as well. So it's a good practice to periodically clear out your Sandbox area. One important thing to note as well, that any data entered into the Sandbox data area cannot be moved directly to the revision data area, or it can't be, for that matter, be moved to official as well. It just stays in the Sandbox data area. Any changes that you feel are valid in Sandbox area that you want to move into the official SAMS, you have to go through the revision data area and then submit those changes accordingly. There's other functionalities of output reports. You can use data version dates, and the data version date selection allows users to view output reports as of midnight last night, as of current date time, and as of snapshots. If you go to the output report selection menu at the top of the page, you will have these drop downs, and the snapshots we publish, typically we publish each quarterly database, and the December 1st and the June payment snapshots, and also the last few years we've been publishing a public and private excess cost aid stack update snapshot that Ed Truax usually does in December, so districts can see what their public and private excess cost aids reports are. The current date time view is the live values in SAMS and is the default setting. If you use the selection midnight last night, that ability will allow you to go into SAMS as a user, use midnight last night, and that output report setting should match the public output reports viewed on the website. The snapshot drop-down menu provides access to versions of the output reports as of the key dates and important events. And as I mentioned, we typically issue those for each data file, the November, the February, May, and also December payment and June payments. We typically create snapshots for SAMS users. When you're using different data version dates, always check the date timestamp in the top left-hand corner of the output report to verify your version selected. And also, we note that when you're within SAMS using those different selections on an output report, most times your back arrow does not automatically reset the data version date to the current time date. you need to actually go back in, select current time date, SAM, to make the output reports official current again. Snapshot selections. I've mentioned these a couple times already. We have the November 15th, and this is the snapshot that's usually the governor, the data that the governor has to do his executive budget run. December 1st is important because it's the data used for your January through May general aid payment schedule. We do have at least once a year a stack update file working with Ed Truax in the stack office. The February 15th, typically the database that's used for the enacted budget runs. May 15th is the SA update and also used for the June payment. And August 15th is the basis for the final September payments, usually called our final adjustments. And also the basis of the data file as the basis of most of the SA32s that are issued each September. When do output reports change? Output reports change any time the underlying SAM's data changes. And this could be data changes that the district submits. This could be data changes that we get from external files, such as full value from OSC or enrollment changes from the IRS office, the SERS system. Also, data changes, we do a monthly stack update that changes your public and private excess cost reports. And when that data changes, the output reports automatically, immediately recalculate when the data is saved on our system. When you access an output report, you do not need to calculate or click on a run button. Just bringing them up and opening the report goes and does all the calculations within the output report. As I mentioned, SED receives and periodically updates district data from non-SAM sources, stack, beds, SERS, also facilities planning, your building data, BOCES data changes, bus purchase data. There's a lot of different ancillary systems that feed into SAMs that could change output report calculations. These changes may not immediately impact your aid calculations depending on the state aid processing schedule. Districts are encouraged to be aware of the data and data changes that impact aid but are submitted to SED by other districts or district offices. For instance, we just published the 3-year enrollment summary report on the IRS portal, and we've been asking districts to go out there and look on the IRS portal to see your beds and SERS enrollments, because those data items may not immediately impact your state aid output reports, but they will be impacting state aid calculations this coming fall. And again, the state aid output reports may change periodically due to stack updates, non-SAM's building data changes, non-SAM's transportation data changes. The example is the SA16 submittals, or any districts that submit leases to our business management office. Also, revisions to BOCES SAMs could change output report data. and as I also mentioned earlier, SERS embedded enrollment data. We periodically throughout the year get BEDS enrollment files, and we import them to SAMS, and they could change the output reports. We ask that you periodically review your output reports for changes, especially when you know revisions have been made to ensure that the aid is displayed as anticipated. If you know you're submitting a SAMS change that impacts a current year aid calculation, after you submit it, check your SAMS activity log to make sure it's been logged into SAMS appropriately. Once it becomes official in SAMS, you should see that change on your output report. If you do not, please contact us. And again, no revision will impact or affect your output, your aid payments, if it is not reflected on the official output reports within SAMS and the public reports. So if you submit a revision and it's not reflected on the official output reports and you feel it should be, then please contact us. And again, as I mentioned earlier, changing data on current year SAMS forms does not always affect current year output report calculations. For example, ST3 data from the prior school year reported on this year's SAM system impacts current year transportation aid, but the same ST3 data from the prior school year reported on this year's SAM system is used in this year's approved operating expense output report. However, this AOE will not be used in the current year aid calculation, only in projected aids. So you'll see the data come through on your AOE report, but that AOE may not be used until the next year. So it's important to, when you submit changes and see the output report changes, track them through, find them on the output reports, look at the source columns to make sure your calculations are valid. Validity of the output report calculations. As I mentioned earlier, the output reports are going to be published this fall, say in October. If you don't complete all your form sets, the reports within SAMS may not be valid. The results may not be valid. So before you start using your output reports to check aid calculations, we strongly encourage that you complete all your current year SAMS forms and schedules and submit them and make sure they're official within SAMS. Output reports and state aid payments. The output reports displayed the total aid due for the year, but state aid is not typically paid out as one lump sum amount, but rather is based on multiple state aid payment schedules set forth in education law. The payment schedules are established using point-in-time state aid calculations or data files. Aid changes as a result of a claim revision may be reflected in an output report, but depending on the timing of the change, may not be reflected in the state aid payment schedule for some time. For example, data for the January through May general aid payment is based on a December 1 data file. If on December 15th you submitted a data change to transportation aid and we accepted it, well, this example is March, it'll change the output report immediately, but you won't see any general aid payments until the aid is recalculated in May for the June payment. So output reports are in SAMS both the public and official ones are real time, so any aid changes and claim revision data changes in official are reflected immediately, but your payments, state aid payments, are based on a payment schedule, and those are done several times during the year, December 1st, June 1st, and then there's a year-end payment. And if you want to get any more additional information regarding the payment schedules, we do have the State Aid Handbook, and also the State Aid Payment Unit can help you out with the State Aid payment schedules or the payment certs. Printing reports. Printing the reports from the public State Aid website is fairly simple. View the reports. They're printable like any other page when you're looking at a normal public browser. You just select drop-down file print and print it. When you're within SAMS, at the top of each report, there's a print form link that formats the page nicely for you so it fits on an 8.5 by 11 page. So this will create a nice page view and a nice print view for you. And that's my presentation. We've taken 42 minutes out of the 45 minutes. We have about 15 minutes or so for questions.
If anyone has a question, please feel free to type it into the chat window, the question window, or hit the raise hand button if you'd like to talk to Bruce over the phone.
And I believe, Matt, you're also going to make this PowerPoint presentation available to the attendees?
Yes, I already emailed it out.
Okay. Everybody's welcome. If you have any questions, after you go back and you look at the PowerPoint presentation, please feel free to email or call me. If you have any questions accessing the reports or trying to understand what the reports mean.
Bruce, it's Deborah Cunningham. I have a question. So what
Sure.
are some of the most common misunderstandings about output reports that you've come across that districts have trouble with?
I think just the difference between what it means when they see them in SAMS and what it means when they see them on the public page. A lot of times districts are uncertain as to why they're different, and it really comes to be the difference could be how the districts are viewing the output reports when they're logged in. If they're viewing revision data area or official area, or the timing difference between the public reports and being live in SAMS. Other than that, questions come up as when districts are trying to look at the source column to understand the terminology in the source column. If we don't have a year designated in the source column and we say Gen entry 28, that means it's coming from the current year, claim year. If it's other than the current claim year in the source column, we might say something like 1011 Gen. That means you would have to go back and look several claim years ago to find that amount being pulled forward from the 1011 Gen.
Okay, great.
Okay, we have no questions in chat, and we have no questions in the question and answer pane.
Okay, it's Deborah Cunningham. I have one other question for you, Bruce.
Sure.
Who really should be looking at these output reports? I mean, obviously your state aid contact is going to be doing it, but do you recommend them for board members or superintendents or other people that aren't quite as close to the state aid data?
I think anybody that isn't as close to the state aid data, I would advise them to look at the state aid handbook first. The state aid handbook is a great resource. It provides a narrative of each aid calculation, and then use the state aid handbook in conjunction with the output reports to not only see the narrative of the state aid formula, sort of in plain English, we try to do the best we can, and then you can see actually the math on the screen on the output reports. And that's probably the best way to begin to start digesting an aid formula.
Okay.
It's very difficult to go to the actual legislation sometimes and digest it, but once you can get a good understanding via the state aid handbook and the output reports, then if you want to take the time, you can go one step further and pull out most of our state aid calculations are in Education Law 3602.
Yes, the state aid handbook is extremely valuable. Are there certain output reports that are better for the non-technical person, or that are easier for the non-technical person to digest, I guess is what I'm asking?
Well, I think that if you're at the superintendent level, you would certainly want to look at your Gen output report first, because that not only gives you the general aids on the first page as a kind of a quick summary, and then the following 4 or 5 pages give you some detailed calculations, but that gives you the summary on the first page, and at the very end of the output report, it gives you a little summary of your total state aid for the district. So that's a good report at a kind of a higher level. And then most of the other reports are almost like subsidiary reports that feed into the general aids output report.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that's excellent, because I think, the business official has to be on top of all the detail, but he also has to, he or she has to figure out how to communicate with people that are not as close to the information. So that is very helpful. Thank you.
And especially, at that higher level, you can print out 2 or 3 years of Gen output reports and be able to even cut and paste pieces of that into a presentation to be able to show like a superintendent or board members to say, here's a 3-year trend in these specific aid categories.
That's an excellent suggestion, actually. That will be very helpful.
And some of these also, some of these reports, I believe if you kind of select, when you're in your browser, you can select all, and I believe a lot of times you can drop them right into an Excel worksheet, and it'll actually put the data items into the various cells and then allow you to start, doing things with it, putting years, different years, and creating spreadsheets with this data. So it is pretty useful if you can have those skills at the business official end too.
Yes, very, very useful. Thank you.
Also, I want to mention, if you're out there and, don't send in the requests every day or I'll be buried, but if you're a user out there and you really need to get data out of the system, we can extract. Let's say you need your TRA output report data for several years. We could actually export data out of SAMS for district users. But again, only if it's something that you feel you really can't do at your end efficiently. We do have access to large data sets within SAMS.
Okay, we have a question. Is there a way to tie the output reports to the legislative runs?
Actually, the snapshot functionality gives you the output reports as of the February, for instance, the February database. If you go into SAMS in the 13-14 school year, claim year, and you click on Feb 15th database or snapshot, that should give you your 13-14 output reports as of the legislative database. And the legislative database is the one that's usually used for the budget. And I believe at the end of the year also, when districts get their final adjustments, we ask districts to use the snapshot functionality within SAMS to be able to find where their year-end adjustment numbers are coming from. So if you have an overpayment or a supplemental due, you can usually use the snapshot functionality within SAMS to see what data items are changing that cause that supplemental or overpayment.
All right, thank you very much. We do not have any other questions on hold here.
Okay, well, Bruce, I want to thank you very much for this very comprehensive presentation in an area that is very useful to folks, and for all the tips on how this information can be used to help business officials do their job. And appreciate you participating, and I hope thanks to all our listeners, and hope you all have a great afternoon.